You're watching Growth at connect.faith. We're a community of people, unbound by location, coming together at the intersection of creativity, spirituality, and justice. In this video, you'll find music and stories, interviews, and more around the theme The Light Shines Through. We encourage you to jump around this video, find your favorite segments, and let us know what they are in the comments below. We hope you enjoy.
You are my light, my northern star, guiding our path with your strong hand. You are our living roots, our tree. You are my love, my family. You are our love, our family. You are my light, my northern star, guiding our path with your strong hand. You are my living roots, my tree. You are my love, my family. You are our love, our
You heard us tonight do some different takes and how everything's always different every time because the air is different, the mood is different, our impulses are different. And so when we're really listening to ourselves and also importantly everyone else around you, there's always fuel and there's always inspiration in all of those stimuli. And I feel like if you open yourself up to that, a lot can happen and it can take you on a wild ride, but it can really, it's really authentic because you allow yourself to be like, wow, I don't know what's going to happen right now. I don't think I can do this. And it's like, you allow that to be part of the conversation in the music and be like, I think I'm going to blow this, but I'm going to go for it anyway, and it's like, and that's sort of like, I feel really connected to that in my faith journey right now, to be like, oh, I don't think I'm going to make it, or don't think I'm going to get that. And just this idea that God is going to hold us wherever we are on that, in that trajectory. And I feel like the music does that for us. The music is holding us together, and always, like, it's a really powerful thing for me to look back in my life and see all these iterations or different parts of the journey that feel like they all were part of some kind of plan or some kind of cohesive thing, even though they don't make sense in any given moment.
Pastor Debbie invited me to share this as a spiritual practice that anyone can do at home. So I've been really thinking about why I think this actually is an incredibly accessible spiritual practice. If there's something that inspires me in the world, creating the mandala is a nice way to express it and kind of be more present to it. A lot of times when I pause and think about what's going on in my life, there's some upset or some concern. I'm going to share with you a piece I did this morning that was kind of about everyone being grumpy in my house. So I find this kind of art is a great way to shift that upset or concern or worry that you have into a place where you feel some peace of mind. And to me, that's a lot of what a spiritual practice is about, is transforming something. So this morning, when I got up, I thought my family, we were going to have this great, beautiful day together, and everyone, my husband has a headache, and I don't know, it just seems like everyone is grumpy, and I realized I was stuck feeling like that wasn't supposed to be. I wanted it to be some other way, so I'm like, okay, that's what I'm going to do my piece on today. So I just started by drawing a little circle, and I really drew like a down arrow like that, because it just felt like, it's this feeling of going down and depression and anger and whatnot. And then I just turned my paper and drew it the other way like that. So the next thing I drew was just like a mad face. I was like, wow, everyone's grumpy. I'm just gonna draw this grumpy face. So I guess I drew these arrows next, because I felt sort of like, I don't know which way to go. Should I go this way or that way? And just this feeling of like, it's not supposed to be like that. So I drew the X's. And then what happens as I do them is I start to just go, well, I need to fill something in between. So I think I drew these diamonds, and then, I don't know, I was thinking about being in jail, so I drew these vertical lines like that. As I worked my way out, I was present to some sadness. So I thought, okay, I'll put a teardrop in there. That kind of represents being sad. And then I drew little dots around them, because I often find little dots make things look cool. And then I just kind of started noodling around and doodling a little bit more in between the spaces. And eventually I finally got to this. So what happens to me at the end of the piece is I just feel different, like I kind of got like, everyone's grumpy and it's all right. It's kind of contained inside something. And I packed up my stuff and I was getting ready to come over here, and I don't know, people were still grumpy, and I was kind of laughing, and my husband was like, what? I'm like, nothing, bye. This is all you need. It can be a pen and a piece of paper, it can be a crayon, and really it could be anything.
I love what you said about you don't have to be an artist, that it's not art really.
Yeah.
And I love how that freed up those of us who don't define ourselves that way.
Yeah, it's a passion of mine that people cut themselves out of this expression that everybody can do. If you can make a mark on a piece of paper, right, you really can do it. And yeah, and it's fun too. I just think joy is an important spiritual practice too. And if remembering what you felt like when you were a kid and you just scribbled with crayons could be alive and well, please do it. I'll give you the crayons.
Stan stood looking at the window, thinking about the meeting that he was about to have. He knew what he had to do. He just did not want to have to do it. Carolyn was a single mom who had a hard time figuring out how to pay the bills for her children. But she'd taken money out of petty cash. There was no doubt about that. And she needed to be fired. There was no doubt about that either. He stood standing and staring out the window at nothing really, until suddenly he began to see a distant memory. Himself, a tall, thin 16-year-old, cutting through the church lobby. He was on his way home. It was just a little before Christmas, and there were these presents sitting there wrapped, saying, for a girl 10 years old, for a boy 14 years old. He had a little sister at home. He knew his mother had no money for presents, and without thinking about it at all, he picked it up and started to put it in his backpack. But someone saw him, grabbed his arm, and brought him to the church secretary, saying, this young man was stealing from the needy. Do you want me to call the police? The secretary said, oh no, I told him he could have that for his sister. Stan remembered feeling shocked. He'd never met her before. The other man left and he said, "Why did you do that?" And she said, "There's this thing we talk about in church sometimes. It's called grace. It means forgiveness we don't deserve. We all need it sometime. Today it was just your turn." There was a knock at the office door, and Stan opened it and saw Carolyn, saw the tears in her eyes as she came in, and he asked her, "Have you ever heard about grace?"
Having the set pattern to singing the psalm really allowed me to kind of get behind my barriers. I'm a really critical person, and I'm used to reading the text and judging it a lot. And when I sing it, or when I craft a poem, it kind of lets those defensive barriers go down and really encounter it in a different way. So this is kind of what my process looks like. In the morning, I get my coffee, go in my study, and one of the practices I do is I read through a psalm, like Psalm 7. And one verse that really stood out to me when reading it was verse 11. It says, "God is a righteous judge and a God who has indignation every day." When I was reading that, I thought a lot of the injustice that we encounter in the world, both the super personal and the global, and the idea of a God who will bring justice in time really hit home with me, and that's when I wrote this. Sometimes we long for justice, that great reckoning in one fell swoop, undoing all evil from these relentless years. But it would take an eternity to be reconciled to these enemies who poured hot coals down our backs, years to look our captors in the eye, and centuries to talk with him, who changed our earthly life forever. But then such time is promised, and maybe that is why the Lord truly can wipe away every last tear while we sing Alleluia. And I kind of wrote it in the shape of an hourglass, reflecting on the time of God's judgment. It doesn't come quickly or when we want it, but it's a hopeful delay.
Silence, no need to be afraid. Your eyes keep them open. Witness the world end. You'll find there's hope when you're facing an angel. The joy may be painful, but after the sky falls, promise beneath the dying breath, our scarred earth is healing. A lifetime of footsteps. Where are they leading? Don't make me believe you. Just take me to see you. After the sky falls, the oceans will be
You know, just any number of things where I I think just making children aware from a young age of what the world can look like, what it should look like, and what it actually looks like, and how can we live our lives so that we get to that place? How can we practice our faith and live our lives so that the world we live in looks like the one we want to live in?
Silence, no need to be afraid. Your eyes, keep them open. Witness the world end. You'll find there's hope when you're facing an angel. The joy may be painful, but after the sky falls, the oceans will be blue. Promise beneath the dying breath, our scarred earth is healing. A lifetime of footsteps. Where are they leading? Don't make me believe you. Just take me to see you. After the sky falls, after the sky falls, after the sky falls, the oceans will be
So we looked out into the community and saw a need and thought we have the ability to meet that need. And so we started the Challenge of Change program, where groups come in, can be intergenerational, mostly youth groups that come and serve during the day in some kind of physical and tangible way typically. And then in the evenings we talk about those social justice issues that are in our backyard for our, well, it's all over the country, of course, but for us, we've got the farm worker community right nearby, so we can be connected in that way and see in a real tangible way what those needs are. And so we talk about human trafficking and immigration issues, and try to look at how we can change things more systemically rather than just doing the charity work. You have folks that do come in thinking we're going to go do this mission trip, is where you pick up a hammer and fix someone's roof or whatever, and then get to pat yourself on the back and go home. But then we really start looking into, okay, where are we in this whole thing? What is our role that we've played in having poverty in our backyard, and what can we do about it that changes things, and really try to make that an educational piece there. My job at times feels like I need to get from, okay, it's not we're coming in and helping because that's the good Christian thing to do, but it's we need to admit and accept where we've come from. So I think sometimes when we just come in and say, I haven't been a part of this, but I'm here to help, is cutting it short. And I think that we need to be able to admit where our sins have come in. And so now I need to ask God forgiveness. I need to ask others forgiveness. And I think that's the stepping point. And if we don't start there, then I don't know how we're going to ever get through any of that.
The many worlds interpretation postulates that each decision that we make spawns a new reality around it. So the fact that you're still watching me instead of flipping back to the Try Guys means you've created a new universe in the vast multiverse. And in some of those new universes, you go on to become the next Barack Obama. I hate to break it to you, but you're probably not going to be the next Barack Obama. Admittedly, I may be taking some liberties with Everett's many worlds interpretation, but the fact remains that if I'm not careful, that's exactly where my mind goes. And I think that's where a lot of our minds go in that moment between decision and action. If we're not careful, it feels like our entire future hinges on the one decision that we are making. Because in a way, it does. Every decision we make forms the future that we are going to be living. It's like we're locked into a particular future. And in all likelihood, it's not going to live up to our hopes and our dreams. Sometimes you have to care enough about something to be willing to do it poorly. This mental model works for me when I'm feeling stuck in that penultimate moment. If the thing I'm embarking upon truly matters to me, I have to be willing to do it, even if I can't do it perfectly.
My mom actually brought me to a yoga class, a private yoga class that she gifted herself and her daughters for Mother's Day. And we went to her teacher. It was very cool. And I remember doing the asana, which is the word for the physical part of the yoga, the postures. There's many limbs to a yoga practice. The physical postures are asanas. And I would just remember the sensation in my body of relief, having been sort of a tightly held ballerina for so long, to finally be able just to breathe and move my body in a different way. I'll really never forget that day. Something turned on that day. And so throughout my teenage years, which unlike many people, mine were difficult. I'm just kidding. I always found solace in movement. And it often found its way into a studio of some sort. I went from ballet into modern, and then found my way wanting to go more into this sort of movement that was informed by my own spiritual life. Those two together felt really safe. They feel still very integrated and effortless. Whereas when you're a classically trained dancer, or you're in a dance company, which I was in my early 20s, you're being told what to do. You're the vessel, you're the expression, you're the instrument. I loved being that role. And then I really found that I wanted to feel free internally, to match the feeling of freedom externally with a feeling of freedom internally in my own heart, in my spirit. And so that has informed my work as a teacher.
I'm sensing that you're saying you meet them where they are. I'm wondering what that looks like.
I certainly keep up with my own professional development to ensure that I can teach any population of person that comes to my class, a pregnant person, a person who's different able-bodied. But for those who feel timid or feel that they're not quite the right match for, say, a yoga class or something, I really want to encourage him or her to first give it a shot, because you never know. And you could find your teacher at the gym, right? It doesn't have to be this expensive, fancy yoga studio on Main Street. It could be like at the small YMCA. I mean, a lot of teachers start there. A lot of really good teachers are looking for a place to teach. So you never know where that's going to be. And the vulnerability of showing up as yourself in the body that God gave you, there is so much courage in that will inform the rest of your day, that could inform the rest of your life, that will inform like how you decide to eat that night for dinner, like what you decide, is that going to nourish this beautiful body that I've just put through this very hard hour, or I'm not flexible, or I don't look like her and I don't look like him. And, it's so much about being guided through your breath, about understand, again, to go back to presence, to get to know and continue the journey of becoming yourself.
This was growth at connect.faith from our pilot season, The Light Shines Through. There are other videos in our pilot season. You can find them all linked below. Connect.faith is creating a community of people who are coming together at the intersection of creativity, spirituality, and justice. And we hope you'll join the community, participate in our book club, join a digital fellowship event around food and friendship. You can find out more about all of it at our website, connect.faith.